Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, time to take a look at the final episode of the day, Hard Time. An elderly and bearded Miles O'Brien sits in an Agrathi jail cell, drawing patterns in the sand. Two Agrathi enter and tell him he is not free to go. He claims that he has nowhere to go, but is thrown out of the cell anyway. His only way is to find Major Kira looking over him. Kira explains that the Agrathi have implanted a 20-year prison sentence in his head, and that only a few hours have passed since his conviction. O'Brien sits dazed and tells Kira that being in prison for 20 years feels very real to him. Captain Sisko explains to Keiko that while on mission to Agratha, O'Brien was falsely accused and sentenced to 20 years accused of espionage and sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, the Agrathi are experts in mind controlling and mind altering technologies, and the criminal system was able to administer him the experience of 20 years of prison in just a few hours of treatment without physically harming him. By the time the details of the events had been received by Deep Space Nine, the sentence had already been completed, and he was free to return home. Keiko asks if she could see her husband, and Sisko tells her as soon as she gets permission from Dr. Bashir, she certainly can. O'Brien and Kira arrive at the station, and Dr. Bashir meets him at the airlock. He promises to do his best to remove the memory implants. He asks O'Brien a bit about the experience, such as if he was left alone in a cell. O'Brien says yes, but from a flashback to his incarceration, it becomes clear that he has a cellmate named Ichar. O'Brien remembers the time he met Ichar in his cell, helped him give him a fruit called Chilash. They exchange their names, crimes, and sentences. Back reality, O'Brien affirms to Bashir that he was totally alone. Bashir soon discovers that the memories of his imprisonment are not simply implanted. He really experienced living in a cell for 20 years, though in his mind at an accelerated rate. Thus, eradication of these memories is out of the question, and he has to accept them. He tells Keiko and she understands. They go to see O'Brien in the infirmary, but try to order the Chilash fruit from the replicator. When Keiko enters the room, he first sees Ichar in her place, but then fades as he holds her and remembers she is pregnant. O'Brien soon finds he has trouble undoing the habits he had taken up during his incarceration, including saving scraps of food for later during dinner with his family. A flashback shows Ichar doing the same thing. O'Brien, who has grown a beard, questions Ichar on how to cope, and he shows O'Brien how to draw complex patterns of sand called isikas to pass the time. They're told it's time to go to sleep, and the Keiko wakes in the middle of the night to find O'Brien sleeping on the floor. O'Brien's memories come back to haunt him, and begins to see his former simulated cellmate Ichar walking around the station. The play starts with Worf and Quarks for a bit, but leaves when he sees Ichar out on the promenade. He also finds it difficult to readjust to life back on the station. Later, when on the cargo base, she comes to remember the names of various tools. O'Brien is determined to get back up to speed immediately and dive into work. He makes some prayers with the crew in a junction of an access conduit, and Munis briefly checks him and has a friendly exchange. O'Brien is friendly too, but hiding his stress when Munis leaves for lunch. O'Brien hangs back, only to be confronted by Bashir about not having been to Counselor Telnori for the past 10 days. O'Brien says he does not want to talk about his life in prison, only to forget it and be left alone. Bashir keeps pushing, and O'Brien snaps at him, storming off. O'Brien then remembers a time when he reached his limit on staying calm in the cell. He made noise when he banged on the door, objecting to his incarceration but also inviting a threat of retaliation from the guards for the disturbance. HR finally held him down to prevent any actions taken. Later on, he goes to Quarks again and lashes out at him for taking his time to serve him a drink, pinning him by the arm. O'Brien leaves with this drink to a table to be alone. Rachel continues to reappear, claiming that in O'Brien's eyes, he was real and always will be. O'Brien tells him to go away, but HR says he can't because he's O'Brien's friend and needs him now more than ever. Quark then tells Odo about the incident, and they both observe O'Brien at his table. O'Brien continues seeing HR, now on his way to work. He says he's worried about O'Brien, but O'Brien says he's okay. But HR makes the point that O'Brien keeps seeing him. Soon, Sisko calls O'Brien to his office. Hearing about O'Brien's behavior, Sisko relieves him of duty, orders him to report to the infirmary, and to attend daily counseling sessions. Brian tries to ask for another chance, but Cisco tells him he's unfit for duty and if he doesn't get help, he'll have no choice but to have O'Brien confined to the infirmary. O'Brien storms out of ops, stabbing at Dax and Hager throws his comm badge at the floor on the turbo lift. Dax looking on, concerned. Then he goes to the infirmary and tells Bashir to leave him alone. Interestingly, HR appears just behind Bashir, and O'Brien steps directly at the both of them. O'Brien returns to his quarters, but on the way, HR continues to confront him, saying he can't run from him forever. Furthermore, there's a reason O'Brien can't get rid of him. He returns to his quarters, eventually to a worried Keiko. Unfortunately, when only pesters him for attention at this moment, he becomes so angry that he gets up and nearly hits her, shocking Keiko. Horrified by what he nearly did, Mansa leaves and then goes to a cargo bay and vents his frustration by smashing over storage containers enraged with a pole. Finally, he spots weapons locker 47 and pulls the phaser out, deciding to commit suicide. Synaphaser Maximum, he aims it at himself by placing it directly under his chin. Bashir arrives and tries to talk O'Brien of killing himself. O'Brien starts crying and says he cannot go on living on when he is a threat to his family and all his friends. The man he was is gone, and all that's left is a dangerous monster. He confesses his worst crime. After almost 20 years, he found that HR had been hoarding food without telling him, and killed him in a rage. Ferreira said the food was for both of them. O'Brien, an evolved human of the 24th century, gave into a bestial rage and murdered his best friend, all for nothing. Bashir tells him he's wrong. The fact that he feels remorse over killing HR proves that he is still a decent human being, not a monster. His captors tried to strip away his humanity. They had succeeded for a moment, but if O'Brien takes his own life, they gradually will have succeeded in destroying a good man. O'Brien lowers the phaser, and Bashir takes it away. Over Bashir's shoulder, O'Brien is surprised to see HR smiling at him without reproach. HR tells his friend to be well, and walks away, disappearing. Walking O'Brien back to his quarters, Bashir prescribes a medication that will take the edge off his depression and will stop him from having any more hallucinations. However, the false memories cannot be removed, and O'Brien will have to come to terms with them on his own. Bashir convinces him to resume counseling sessions, and O'Brien thanks his best friend for all his help. When he enters his quarters, O'Brien is gratified when Molly runs into his arms, glad to have him back. Aww. So now let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. This episode was the last of the series to be directed by Alexander Singer. This episode shares a similar premise to that of The Inner Light, in that Captain Picard also experienced a lifetime memories within a short period. Interestingly, both episodes feature actress Margot Rose. The same premise of putting convicted criminals in a virtual reality prison simulation where they experienced decades of imprisonment during a few hours period was featured in the Outer Limits episode The Sentence, which aired 4 months after Hard Time. The method of punishment inflicted on Chief O'Brien is similar to the punishment inflicted on Tom Paris and ex post facto. Paris has the final memories of the man he was convicted of killing implanted in his brain and is forced to relive them on a regular basis. In both cases, the victims were falsely convicted, although for different reasons. While O'Brien discusses past experiences with Bashir, he makes a reference to the events of Tribunal. Reference to 47. At the end of the episode, O'Brien opens weapons locker number 47. The scene in which O'Brien kills HR was edited for the episode's terrestrial release in the UK to remove the sound of bones breaking. So overall, I think this episode is it's really emotional and gut punching, and yeah, it's kind of upsetting for everything that O'Brien had to go through all that time. So yeah. So overall, I give Hard Time 4 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in on Fridays. Wait till the next episode, Shattered Mirror. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.